In today's video, we're revisiting the Panasonic LUMIX G25mm F1.7 prime lens for micro four thirds. Now that we have a brand new G9 Mark II and GH7, I thought it might be worth going over some of the old and affordable lenses for micro four thirds and see how they perform with the brand new autofocus system and brand new cameras. Two things to make mention of in today's video. I'm back at Tooradin, this lovely coastal town here in Victoria, Australia. And I'm also using a 25mm F1.7 prime on my GH7 for all of the talk to camera piece. This will all be set to autofocus so you can get a good sense of how it performs for video, and all the photos will be taken thanks to my G9 Mark II, which also has a second 25mm F1.7 prime on it. Now both of these cameras are so similar that if you like one or the other, it's going to look identical on the other camera. Let's get into it.
Just to be clear, anytime you see me holding the camera, all of that footage is shot using a 25mm f1.7 prime on the GH7. Everything else, including the video and photographic samples, were all shot using the G9 Mark II. I only had one variable ND filter, and that's being used on the GH7. Everything on the G9 Mark II is straight out of camera, shooting either JPEG or video.
This 25mm f1.7 is very capable of creating some really nice shallow depth of field. So here's a photo at f1.7. As you can see, I can get up nice and close and blur the background out. So if that's important to you, it's a really great choice.
Looking at the photos in post-production, I'm really impressed with how this lens handled chromatic aberration. This is wide open on a bright sunny day in a high contrast situation, and it's doing a really great job. F4 is the sweet spot when it comes to sharpness, but you can still get great results wide open, as you can see from these examples. I also took the opportunity to shoot with handheld high resolution mode on the G9 Mark II, and while I use that mode a lot, this was the first time testing it out with a 25mm prime. If you're unfamiliar with handheld high resolution mode, it compiles a bunch of photos in camera to output a much higher resolution file. It's somewhere around 100 megapixels, and as you can see, it's doing a great job.
Minimum focus is also very respectable, so if you're doing any type of product shots or close-up work like this, you can get some really great results. Let's stop down to f4. And this should be quite a lot sharper than at f1.7, but this is still a pretty sharp lens even when wide open.
I tested the sharpness by shooting a range of aperture values from f1.7 all the way down to f22. It started to get really soft at f14, and f22 was almost unusable.
For those who are new to shooting micro four thirds, I can highly recommend this as a first prime lens. And the reason why is 25mm on micro four thirds, due to the 2x crop of this particular sensor, will give us a 50mm equivalent field of view. 50mm is super versatile, whether we're shooting something up close or whether we're doing a talk to camera piece like this. It's nice and easy to get really great results. And f1.7 is fast enough that you can create lots of shallow depth of field, and you can also use it in low light with great success as well. And being that this is as light and as inexpensive as it is, it's a no-brainer if you're a fan of traveling light and small. This is one of the big reasons a lot of people love to shoot micro four thirds, and that's because of the cost-effective lightweight lens liner. The great news is with the G9 Mark II and GH7, we're getting fast autofocus for photography here, and the same would be true for contrast DFD, but if I half press the shutter, the autofocus system is nice and snappy and responsive, whether we're using the back autofocus button or I'm half pressing the shutter. This is for the video shooters and content creators. So let's do a quick autofocus test. The GH7 is set to human and body detection, so it's going to be able to track me back here. I'm going to step out of frame for a moment. Hopefully I'm out of frame. That looks about right. If I go back in frame, it should detect me. And as I walk towards the camera, it should be tracking me hopefully flawlessly. I've tested this out enough and it works really well. Now, people go, you shouldn't do these type of tests. They're pointless. They're not pointless whatsoever. If you're sitting in front of the camera talking to it for long periods of time, it actually is a thing that people do. And I hold my hand up. Looks like it's tracked my hand. It's gone back to my head. It's gone back to my hand. It's gone back to my head. So this new autofocus system is great. The only slight trade-off with this lens when it comes to its video performance is it does have quite a lot of focus breathing, and I'll show you that right now. Focus breathing is where the edges of frame appear to zoom in and out when you pull focus from minimum to infinity focus. And just using this autofocus test right now, you can see just how far the edges of frame are zooming in and out. While focus breathing isn't ideal for video shooting, if you just plan on talking to camera like this, or even moving in to nowhere near minimum focus, you're not going to see it move as much. As you can see, the edges of frame slightly changing right now, but nowhere near as much as the extreme focus pull from minimum to infinity focus. Now, if you're a handheld video shooter, I can still recommend this lens, even though it doesn't have any optical image stabilization. The difference now between an optically stabilized lens and one without it is very minimal when it comes to the end result. And that's thanks to the new IBIS system found in the G9II and the GH7. But if you're shooting with a GH6 or even a GH5 Mark II, you're still going to get excellent results with this. But the newer camera systems have such great in-body image stabilization now that it really makes no difference.
Here's a few more video samples shot on the G9 Mark II in different frame rates. If you're wondering how big these pelicans are, they come up to about your hip. They're huge. All of this footage again is shot handheld, and you can see just how stable this in-body image stabilization system is, even with prime lenses. I can definitely see a little bit of chroma in a few of these shots, but overall it's still pretty minimal. Here's some low light tests shooting with the G9 Mark II and the LUMIX 25mm F1.7. This was shot between ISO 2000 and 3200, and I'm really pleased with the results. This is with the correct shutter speed, shooting 4K at 25 frames per second. I think it looks great. Let us know what you think.
Let's talk about build quality on this LUMIX 25mm F1.7 lens, because it's basically a bare bones plastic design body lens. We do get a focus ring, and this also feels really nice. It is focused by wire like the rest of the Micro Four Thirds lenses from Panasonic, but it also ties into the linear focusing system built into the modern cameras. So if you've got anything, I think, from the GH5 Mark II and up, you'll have access to basically what will replicate a manual feel experience. There's no hard stops on either side, but you can set how far you need to turn the focus ring for it to focus from minimum to infinity. So that's great. There's a 46mm filter thread on the front. And while I am using a variable ND on the lens that's on my GH7 right now, they're a little bit harder to find, and sometimes they can cost a little bit more than the larger ones for some reason. I'm not too sure, maybe it's a specialty size. There's no autofocus manual focus switch anywhere on this lens, so you'll be using the lever on the back of your camera to set the focus mode accordingly. This lens only weighs 126 grams, and even in 2025, there's not too many lenses from manufacturers that are as small and as light as this. I know Viltrox are making some APS-C lenses, which are very small. They also make some pretty small full frame lenses, but I don't think they're as light as this one. As a YouTuber working across a number of different YouTube channels, these 25mm lenses are great. Not only are they fun to take photos and video with, but they can be used in a multi-camera setup and help keep the overall cost down, but still keep the overall look up. This is one of the best things about it. So for example, if I was to buy two 50mm primes for my full frame S5 Mark II or X, it would cost me at least $1,000 Australian, maybe 1,200, depending on if there's a deal on it at that particular time or not. With these, I can get two lenses for about 400 bucks on sale, which is crazy. So if you're looking for a multi-camera setup and you want a little bit more in focus while still keeping the aperture nice and bright, Micro Four Thirds is still the way to go. Two of the trade-offs with less expensive lenses is usually that they're not very good when it comes to Sunstars, or they have a lot of flaring, and we're going to test that out right now, looking up through the branches of this tree. Now I'm going to be shooting in S&Q mode, because I find that this gives me the most sort of accurate or best results when I do this. And this is at f11 to start with. Let's try this. And now we're at f22, which is the lowest aperture. All right, let's take a look. Let's talk about the results just looking at the flippy screen here. So one of the things I've noticed is the Sunstars actually look better than I thought they would. So that's pretty cool. There's definitely some flaring. And if I see more on my computer screen when I get back, I'll do some voiceover and talk about it back in the studio. But overall, I'm not too dissatisfied with this result. All right, let's wrap this up. So if it wasn't blatantly obvious, I love this lens. I've had 4 of them over the last like 8 years or so. They're really cool lenses. And if you're in a multi-camera situation, again, it's going to make more sense to go Micro Four Thirds. With these cost-effective lenses, you're going to get great results. Secondly, if you're a photographer looking for that classic sort of nifty 50 lens, then this will do that as well. And sure, it doesn't have an autofocus manual focus switch or an aperture ring or anything like that, but you can still get great results out of this. I should also point out, some people find the bokeh a little too busy in the background. I don't really have a problem with it. I think for obviously its price, it's still performing way better than it probably should. But if you've got one of these already, let us know what you think. And if you're thinking about getting one, I'll link it down below. Leave a thumbs up, subscribe, click the bell, all that kind of stuff. I've got more videos coming in 2025. Thanks for watching.